The following 4 examples aren't rules or laws that apply to everyone, but if they do work for others, I'll be even more inspired because it's my intention to be in a space where I'm able to give to others all that I know. I also offer these ideas with a constant reminder that when one listens to Spirit, all things are possible. And even though I'm offering them in a numbered sequence, they certainly don't conform to any linear arrangement. 1. Alignment of feelings. When I feel good, or God, I'm aligned with Spirit. As I tell my children, we must rely on how we feel to determine our state of health, rather than seeking our answers in a medical printout full of numbers. Feeling energized, content, excited, and happy are better indicators of our health and well-being than having our bodily functions assessed by a distant laboratory. A positive, honest response to the question, does this or will this make me feel good, tells us immediately if we're aligned with our creative source or not. 2. Alignments with nature. Everything in nature is in spirit. It isn't spoiled by ego, nor can it ever be. So when nature speaks to us, we should listen intently. When a wild bird touches us, for instance, or a fish brushes by when we're swimming in the ocean or a lake, I believe that it's a direct communication from our source of being. Since these creations of God instinctively keep their distance, when they depart from their DNA patterns to actually contact us physically, I think we should pay attention. So be aware of episodes in nature that arouse spirit and kindle an inner spark of awe and admiration for you. You don't have to discuss it with another being. If it has meaning for you, it's valid. Listen to the winds, the critters, the clouds, the rains, and the oceans. Listen to it all. Indeed, nature has much to teach us, and it will help show the way. All we need to do is align with its perfection and note how it aligns with ours. 3. Alignment with events. Strange occurrences and seemingly inexplicable events may actually be our all-creating source lining up coincidences, in quotes, to teach us and show us the way. The reason we begin to notice all this type of aligned synchronicity is because we've tuned into it. The teachers have always been there, but now we notice them. And our noticing indicates a new level of readiness to listen to our ultimate calling. In fact, these alignments can take some really interesting forms. The same numbers showing up, for example. We awake precisely at 4:44 morning after morning and then see those numbers appear on the odometer, on the radio, as a checkbook balance, at the deli counter, and as an assigned number for a charity walk, causes us to ask, what's going on here? The answer is that the universe is using us to be receptive and pay attention. It's not about playing all fours in a casino or the lottery. It's about knowing that these seemingly accidental repetitions are actually invitations from Spirit to join it. When a book literally falls into our lap or is sent to us by several different people, or even when we keep seeing the title and having it referred to us by others over and over, we need to notice, stop our resistance, and surrender. When we end up reading the contents and applying what it offers, we're aligning ourselves and becoming a vibrational match to the same source that's sending us these signals. And 4, alignments with people. When people line up with our thoughts and mysteriously connect their physical presence with our private inner meanderings, we should take note. We must tell ourselves, Spirit is aligning my thoughts with events that are happening. I'll stay alert to what I'm being offered here because there may be a reason. That's all. Just be cognizant of what might be happening, and by being open to what may be baffling and perhaps indecipherable, we're likely to discover that we're being guided to learn. A few weeks ago, I was reading through a book I'd written 16 years ago. In it, I mentioned a friend, Earlene Rintz, whom I'd attended school with from 4th grade through high school. I put the book down and went jogging, yet Earlene was still on my mind. I thought, I'm going to call her the next time I'm in Detroit. After all, we're both having our 65th birthdays this year. That very evening, I was scheduled to receive the Martin Luther King Mahatma Gandhi Peace Award from the Unity Church of Maui, which would be attended by approximately 1,000 people. As I completed my speech and walked to the lobby to sign autographs, I saw the little girl who sat next to me in grade school and who was my first love and who occupied my thoughts throughout my school years. Believe it or not, as I was thinking of her more than a half-century later, Earlene was thousands of miles from home and hugging me in the lobby of a theater in Lahaina, Maui. It turns out that she was visiting Maui, had seen the award announcement in the newspaper, and had come to the auditorium to surprise me. It was one of those synchronistic alignments of spirit at work. Somehow, at an unconscious level, I was already reconnecting to Earlene without being aware that she was even in the area. Noticing the same folks showing up in different settings, running into people we haven't seen in a while after we've just heard their names mentioned, and repeatedly seeing an individual's name in magazines, on television, or in a local bookstore are all synchronistic alignments. Spirit is lining up these sequential happenings for a reason. We just need to be open to learning the reason, and it most likely will be revealed. Perhaps it will be a dream or a sudden instant of eureka, or maybe it will become clearer when simply allowed. No matter how the message comes, we'll look back on it with a renewed insight and the benefit of no longer being closed-minded about such possibilities. What I know for certain within my very core is that there's no separation between us and all that we encounter in the universe. I wake up every night around 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was a great poet, his name was Rumi, many, many years ago. He said, the morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep. And many of the books that I've written when I'm awakened, and there's something, what is it? What is it that awakens me? It's like I can almost tell you the exact time. It's like, because in a film I did years ago called The Shift, they show a clock, it's 3:13 a.m., almost to the second. Every single night there's something. Is that angels? Is that divine source? Is that someone saying, this is your purpose, this is the time, there's no distractions?
The thing we most want to say is that we're with you saying that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting to us is that that's the time that you decide to listen.
Right. But there's nobody else around to distract me.
And that's the important conversation to have. So what is it about that time? What is it that's happening there that makes you more resonant, that makes you more receptive? And it is that the momentum of your thought has stopped. So there is no contradictory vibration going on within you. So you're more likely to hear. The way we've been defining that most recently is that when you wake up in the morning, you have the potential of being in that highest frequency, because while you slumber, your point of attraction, the momentum of your point of attraction stops. So when you first wake up, before you begin thinking thoughts of what went wrong yesterday or what you have to do today, you're in your greatest potential of that pure positive energy. So if you can focus there and allow a little momentum to get going, what happens is it isn't something that just happens, it's something that you focus yourself into being. But when you focus yourself into that, you tune in, is the best way of describing it. You tune in to that source energy consciousness who has always been aware of everything you're doing, but there's a big difference when you tune into it and you consciously are aware of it. In other words, source is there for everyone all the time. We don't need to talk you into that. We're always there. But when you know it, when you're not doing that thing you do that is preventing you from knowing that, that's when you have those wonderful moments. And you can do that all the time. So sometimes you have beliefs that do not serve you. But when you first awaken, those beliefs are quiet enough that you can find a fresh one that comes from source, that is about who you really are and what you really know.
Is the reverse of that if you awaken and you have a very positive thought? That is, I'm going to heal myself.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. Once you get that momentum going, but if we were standing in your physical shoes, if the thought felt good, we'd think it. We'd think more about it. We'd talk about it. We'd write it down. We would discuss it with others. We would deliberately encourage that momentum. But if it's an uneasy thought, if it feels uncomfortable, then we would do our best to generalize it. The more specific you become in a thought, the more momentum. The more general you become in a thought, the slower the momentum.
Can you have a thought, like I talk a lot about the I am discourses. I am as the name of source, another name for source. If you are feeling weak, but you have a thought saying, I am strong, I mean, that's one of the lines from the book of Joel. Let the weak man say, I am strong. If you continuously say, I am strong, or I am well, or I am healed, or I am wealthy, or I am positive, or I'm loving.
It makes sense. It makes sense, but there is a effort factor, a backfiring factor that sometimes every subject is really two subjects, wanted and absence of it. So if you are feeling not strong and you say, I am strong, which end of the stick are you activating? And what we've noticed is the more effort you are applying, usually you're trying to overcome what you've really got going on vibrationally with words. And instead of it working the way you want it to, it works in reverse, because when you're trying really hard, it's an indicator that you're trying to use your words and your actions and your affirmations to compensate for vibration that you didn't get started off on the right foot. We think affirmations are wonderful, but we would make sure that we are feeling really good when we affirm, because the universe doesn't hear what you say. The universe hears what you mean.
I wrote a book years ago called Inspiration, using the two words inspire, inspirado, inspire, in spirit. There was a great teacher on this planet a couple of thousand years ago named Patanjali, and he said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, that all of your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world.
Perfect.
And then he said, dormant forces, when you're inspired, dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you've ever dreamt yourself to be. It's almost as if you discover yourself to be God or Source or the Tao or Divine Mind or whatever name we place on this source energy that you speak of and speak to us from. Your consciousness expands in every direction. It means there's no up and there's no down. It means there's no right and there's no wrong. It means that there's no north and there's no south. It means that there's no beginning and no end. You begin to move into a consciousness place within yourself that you'll find yourself, when you move into spirit, you're going to find yourself doing things that you don't understand why you're doing them. In 1994, when Immaculée was imprisoned in this tiny little bathroom with 7 other people with no facilities, she did something that I found so astounding. What she did when she entered that bathroom is she asked the pastor whose home she was in, do you have an English and a French dictionary? And she learned English while she was being hunted to be killed. For what reason? Why would someone who is in that kind of a state practice, day in and day out, up to 8-10 hours, and she couldn't speak. They didn't speak for 91 days. No sound whatsoever. So 5 years later, she is a survivor. She represents less than 0.5% of the Tutsi women of Rwanda who survived. All the rest were killed. She went into a place within herself and taught herself a language that she was going to need 5 years from now. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. And then 5 years later, in 1999 or 2000, she had when she was here in America on an asylum visa, married, living out on Long Island, has 2 children, is assimilated into our culture, is a great spokesperson for transcending hatred on the planet. She woke every day, 3 o'clock in the morning, before she went to work at the UN, and wrote every little detail of what happened in those 91 days. 150,000 words she wrote and gave that to me 5 years after that. But how did she know in 1994 that she was going to be in America and coming up on a stage like this and talking to our country in a language that is her 3rd language? How did she know that? Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you have an inkling, when you have, like Ryan, when you have a feeling within you that this is something that you have to do, that you can't be stopped from doing it, the whole world changes. And you start and you listen to it. And you find yourself, if someone hands you a book
and then someone else talks about that book, and then someone else mentions it, and then you see the author on television, and all of a sudden you start saying, wait a minute, I've got to listen to this. I am being directed. I'm being called. I trust in this. I totally, completely trust. Your consciousness expands in every direction when you enter the world of spirit, and you get yourself pulled in these directions, and you allow yourself to be pulled in that way. That's what I mean by your consciousness expands in every direction. Nothing is impossible, and whatever you find yourself doing, that's what you allow yourself to do, and what you allow yourself to be. There's a great quote by Rumi. He's just one of the greatest. Every tree and plant in the meadow seemed to be dancing. Those which average eyes would see as fixed and still. That's what happens when your consciousness expands in every direction. You see, you understand the Tao. The Tao is like it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. It's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. You're a sculptor, and you sculpt yourself a vase. And what do you think makes the vase? What makes the vase is not the tile, and it's not the substance of the material. It's the inner space within there that is surrounding it. Without that inner space within, there can be no vase. And without that inner space within you, there's no you. You're not skin and bone and all that. That encapsulates an inner silence, an inner place that is totally and completely yours, uniquely yours. Your consciousness expands in every direction. When you do, you start practicing things like kindness, where judgment was before. I've often said that when you have a choice to be right or to be kind, just pick kind. Why? Because it's more closely aligned with your spirit. You begin to exude something called love. You feel it for everyone. Believe it or not, at the end of Immaculate's book, she goes to the prison where the people who were her killers, one was her mathematics teacher. And what happens is that you begin to embrace a kind of love even for the people who would do such harm to you. And I'm telling you, that's what saved her. You'll see that when you read it. That's what saved her. The ability to go to that place within, that place of forgiveness. As Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Powerful thinking. You become an instrument of truth. You become someone who listens. You become someone who is God realized.
Rumi said, this ancient Persian poet, brilliant, beautiful poet, he said, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. It feels like bewilderment. It feels like awe. It feels like, even as I think about it now, I can feel myself tearing up behind my eyes, because only I know what is going on behind my eyeballs. It feels like so glorious and so sweet and so trusting, so knowing. You know, there's just this powerful knowing that you're not alone. There's this, that it's like there's a safety, there's a sense of that you're not alone. I had this great experience years ago. There's a friend of mine, he's on KTAR, radio station in Phoenix. His name's Pat McMahon, Irish Catholic guy. And Mother Teresa is to be his guest, right, on the same day that I'm his guest. So we're in the studio, and Mother Teresa comes in. Now she's about 4'10", maybe weighs 80 pounds. And she's there to talk about a homeless shelter that she slept in the night before, to tell the people of Phoenix about this homeless shelter. And I'm there to talk about a book that I don't know which one it was. It was 10, 15 years ago. So Pat tells Mother Teresa, is there anything that I can do for you? And you can imagine the bewilderment and the awe that this is an Irish Catholic guy from, living in Phoenix, and Mother Teresa, a saint,
is coming there, and he's just bewildered. He's beyond bewildered. He just doesn't know what to do with himself. He's just so honored, and he says, "Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can do?" And she said, "No." She said, "I just came here to talk about the homeless shelter." He said, "But Mother Teresa," he said, we have a 50,000 watt clear channel station that goes in every direction." And it was like he's got his ego involved. Like we can help you to raise a lot of money for your work and your mission in Calcutta. And she said, "No, I'm not interested in raising money or your radio station getting a." She said, "I just want to talk about the homeless shelter, that's all." And he's exasperated. And finally he's down on his knees. Really. And finally she says, "Stand up." She said, "You seem so serious." She said, "There is one thing that you can do." And he just stood up and he said, "Well, what is it? I'd do anything." She said, "Well, tomorrow morning," she said, "get up at 4 a.m. And she said, and go out onto the streets of Phoenix and find someone who's living there, who believes that he's alone, and convince him that he's not. That's what you can do." And behind the feeling we're talking about here is this feeling of aloneness for so many people who are lost in the world, that I don't have like a connection to something greater than myself. I've come to believe that who I am is what I do, and what I have, and what other people think about me, and who I am is separate from everybody else, and who I am is separate even from what I'd like to attract into my life, that I'm separate from all the things that are missing, and I'm separate even from God, and that there's a place within me that knows that I'm not separate from any of that, that if there's no place that God is not, or that source is not, or the energy that provides, that is always giving and always creating is not, if there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in me. I know that. And if there's no place that is not, and it has to be in me, it has to be also in everything that is missing in my life, or that I think is missing. It's there too. So that in some mysterious, invisible way, I'm already connected to everything that's missing in my life through something called spirit. And when I recognized that I'm not here as this human being having a spiritual experience, when you recognize that your essence is that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not the other way around, when you really get that, I mean, not that you can say it and it's clever, but when you know that who you are is this essence, you don't see, there's no other, there's no them. There's nothing outside of you. You're connected to everyone and everything. As the Native Americans would say, that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves.
And begin to awaken to a new level, to a whole new level of experience. You'll see it this way. The first thing you'll notice is a tendency to think and act spontaneously, rather than on fears based on your past experiences. In other words, you begin to trust and surrender and to have a sense of spontaneity about your life. And you're not always focused on whether it's going to work out or not going to work out, and be afraid if it doesn't. And those thoughts are you're no longer wanting those thoughts to expand in your life. And then you'll notice an unmistakable ability to enjoy each moment of your life. Every moment becomes an exquisite part of your existence. And you'll find yourself, even in times when you used to think of them as boring or routine, like, maybe getting at an airport and being delayed for a couple of hours, you begin to find an unmistakable ability to enjoy that, and to not judge it, and to see it for what it is, and to even be grateful for it, that you're not getting on a plane that wasn't supposed to leave at that time. You begin to see it that way. And you begin to enjoy the little things that we so take for granted, and the quiet times, and even driving back and forth to work, or you find yourself having this unmistakable new ability to enjoy every moment that you find in your life and to treat it all as a gift. It's a sign of the awakened life. You also find that you're developing a loss of interest in judging other people. You're off of judgment. You're moving beyond that. You understand the truth and the notion that you don't define other people with your judgments. You define yourself as someone who needs to judge. That each one of us is defined by our own thoughts and our own actions. And even those people who are behaving in ways that are antisocial and that are criminal and so on, you find yourself less judging them and more seeing them for what they are. Not saying that they shouldn't be held accountable and responsible, of course, but that judgment, that inner hostility, that inner anger toward them is replaced by a sense of wondering, how could that little baby at one time who was in its mother's arms turn out this way? What created that? And I wonder if there's anything I can do to help eliminate that in other children, rather than the judgment. You find a loss of interest in interpreting the actions of other people. You don't become this great interpreter for what everybody is and what everybody is doing. The awakened life beckons you to just sort of observe it, to note it. And even in your own behavior, you become less inclined to interpret it and more inclined to say that this is just an indication of where I am or where I am not at this particular moment. And with no need to analyze it, you begin to see how everything fits together rather than analyzing every little bit of life and interpreting everything for people. You try to do less of that and more of seeing how we all fit together. The awakened life means a loss of confrontation. You're no longer interested in it. It just isn't important to you. It's like having to prove yourself and make a contest out of everything is just no longer there for you. The real sense of the awakened life behind that is that you don't have to make anybody else wrong, and you don't have to make yourself right. That's the real sense of awakening, when you begin to know that there's much more to life than making a contest out of it. I noticed that when my little boy, who's 2 years old, goes out to play, any place, the only reason that he does it is for fun. I mean, he doesn't try to win, he doesn't try to beat anybody, he doesn't try to confront anybody. He just goes out to play. And we lose that in the name of confrontation and conflict. You begin to develop that sense that inside every one of us is a little 2-year-old who wants to come out and play and doesn't have to win and doesn't have to beat anybody and doesn't have to be in conflict or confrontation. That little child inside of you begins to surface when you start awakening. You lose the ability to worry. I didn't say you lose worry, you lose the ability to worry. It's no longer part of you. You begin to understand the absurdity of worry. You begin to see that it makes no sense to worry about the things that you have no control over. Because if you have no control over them, it makes no sense to worry about them. And then it makes no sense to worry about the things that you do have control over. Because if you got control over them, it makes no sense to worry about them. And there goes everything that you ever worried about. You either have control or you don't. And if you don't, you move on. And if you do, you take control. As you awaken, you lose that ability to just worry about things and instead accept them. You'll notice frequent, overwhelming episodes of appreciation, as she puts it. Frequent, overwhelming episodes of appreciation. Appreciating everything, being thankful. It's one of the great ways to become awakened in your life, is to be thankful for everything and to give thanks for it. Appreciate getting on a plane and having it take off and having it land and having a seat and having someone to serve you a drink and being able to wear clothes and everything about your life. And as you become more aware of how much you have and how much you have to be grateful for, you become less focused on scarcity and what you don't have, because your mind is focused on what you do have. And when your mind is focused on what you do have expands. You begin to develop contented feelings of connectedness with others and with nature. You begin to see that every human being that you meet any place on the planet shares being human with you and what it feels like to be human. You begin to see that there's a oneness to it all, that there's a universal mind, that you're a part of it. And you know that each one of us is connected and that on a round planet we can't choose up sides. That you begin to know that, then you treat the people that you come into contact with the same sense of reverence that you have for yourself, because you are, in fact, that person. It's why Jesus said on the cross when the spear was thrown into him, "Forgive him, Father, for he knows not what he does." The reason he knows not what he does, he doesn't know that he's throwing a spear into himself. Because every time you hurt another human being, you hurt the generic human being. You hurt all of us. And every time you send out love, you create a sense of harmony in that being. You begin to have what she called frequent attacks of smiling. You become more joyous, more merry, more contented as you awaken and get beyond all of this need to accumulate and perform and achieve, which is all wonderful. But when you go beyond it, you begin to develop an increased susceptibility to the love extended by others, as well as the uncontrollable urge to extend it to others. Love becomes what you are, and you can't give away what you don't have, and you can only give away what you do have. And if what you have is love, then that's what you find yourself giving away. Those are the symptoms, the signs of awakening.